People who actually got married on an if we're both still single when we're 35 we'll get married deal. What's your story? Obligatory, not me but a friend. Disclaimer. She married a college friend 3 years ago at the age of 33. Their bet was to get married if they're both single at 33 and the intention was to basically prank their parents by going through with it. They intended to be married for several months and then just casually mention it. And later just get it annulled. So they went to the courthouse with a pair of friends. Got married and then she moved into his apartment. Thing was they'd been friends with benefits for years when they were both single. And living together was so nice that they just stayed together. They're expecting their first kid in a few months. Family friends had this pact. We were at her 30th and her boyfriend at the time proposed. Her best friend, with whom she had the pact, was gutted. He too had a ring in his pocket. We know because he showed my dad. Her best friend sounds like a scumbag. He bought a ring to propose to a woman who was dating someone else. My really good friend and I were joking about this in our early 20s and I got an idea how she really felt about me when she said, yeah. If we're both single at 70 let's get married. Apostrophe. You have to make a counteroffer in those situations. Come back at her with 40. She'll drop to 60. And then you can both meet in the middle at 50. Two of my friends have one of this. I hope they realize they are made for each other before then though. Oh man, my friends said they'd get married at 30 if they didn't meet anyone else. Turns out they couldn't wait. They got together after college. Married a couple years ago and popped a baby girl out couple of days ago all before they're 30. My partner and I were close friends for 12 years before we got married. Through many friendships and relationships with other people. Including one of us following a former lover across the country and the other being briefly engaged. We stayed just friends for a very long time. On New Year's Eve in 2007-8. At the ripe old age of 23. We drunkenly made a pact to get married to each other if we weren't married by 30. Long story short. We didn't start dating until we both turned 30. But we got married pretty quickly after we started dating. Just celebrated 5 years of marriage. And we have a 2-year-old. It's unconventional. But so are we. And it's ours. I asked my pact if we're still on if anything happens. She was insulted I questioned it. It's still on. Edit. Everyone breathe. We're both in relationships. The fact you are in a relationship and still asked the person if the pact was still on means you do not care about your relationship. If you don't agree, tell your girlfriend and see how she feels. I'm not telling you this to attack you. I'm telling you this so you get out of this relationship. And then one day, instead, you'll find someone who lights a fire inside of you so bright and stretches your pants so tight on sight that you would never consider a theoretical pact of any sort with any other beautiful woman on this planet. Godspeed brother, I love you. Not exactly the same, but when I was 21 and he was 24 I said to my friend, if we're not married by the time you're 30 do you want to get married? He said no. Well, we started actually dating a couple months after and this year he will be 30 in May and our wedding is planned for June. Pending COVID-19 lets us gather 30 people and travel within our country. Well, since people are more concerned about your cake day and not what you just said, I guess I'll be the one who says it. Congrats on your wedding. Sorry about the inconvenient times. But all that matters is you two being together. If we are still married when we are 36, we'll get a divorce. I recently met a guy who has this agreement with his fiancée. They both agreed that most divorces occur 5-7 years in. So at 5 years into the marriage they're both going to assess the situation and decide whether they want to stay in or back out. Their prenup has something in it that allows one party to leave with their own assets without fault any time in the first 5 years. It's a strange way to start a marriage. But they're both very methodical people and both like the idea of it. A coworker of mine up and left his girlfriend who was also working there. Of 6 years to move from AK to FL to go through with the pact he made with the other girl in high school. I honestly don't know how they are doing. The ex however lost a 185 pound stressor so I'm glad she's doing exceptionally well. I did. But we got married 10 years earlier. We met at an Ink Master finale. We immediately connected. He lived in New York. Florida. I went back home and we kept in touch. Made a promise if by the time we were 35 we'd marry each other. I was 25 at the time. Things intensified so much we truly believed we were meant for each other. I moved to Illinois to take care of my sick grandma. 3 months after meeting he flew there to visit and we got married. After a few more visits he moved there too. 4 years later and we have 2 kids. One of my friends from high school had a deal with this with her high school boyfriend. Thus, when they turned 30, they had a baby together. Unfortunately, she was also a drug addict and ended up committing a felony, going to prison. And I'm pretty sure the kid is with him, and even though she's out of prison now she can't have her daughter with her at whatever housing she is at. Do not recommend. I had that deal with a girl I was so in love with in HS college. I, an idiot, lost touch and married someone else in my 20s. That went down in tremendous flames and as far as I know she was still single. We haven't talked for many years. Open bracket. We ended up getting married a lot sooner. He wasn't necessarily waiting around for me, but I realized I'd be devastated if he ended up with someone else and no longer had him as a constant friend in my life. Don't let the good ones get away. We've been married 13 years now and never regretted a minute of it. I'm going to start off by saying congrats. But on the other hand, why the hell does it take this level of jealousy fear to ignite proper relationships? It's clear you're close friends for a reason. Right? Understandable if the person wasn't physically attractive to you, because I know relationship is more than just good companionship. Hence sexuality existing. But goddamn. Haha. Our promise wasn't for when we're 35 but 30. We have been friends for years before we made the joke promise and have been friends for 11 years, became friends when I was 17, she was 16, through many friendships and relationships with other people, including one of us almost getting engaged to a former lover. We still remained friends. When I clocked 20, if I recall correctly, we jokingly promised to get married to each other if we weren't married by 30. Long story short, I'm 28 now and she's 26. We didn't start dating until last year and are supposed to be getting married in June, if coronavirus lockdown lets us. We went through a lot of maturity and personal changes in our early 20s and it was so admirable watching how she grew and became wove. Over the course of 5 years watching her grow, I knew she was and still is the one. No regrets here. Edit. Woke not wove. I upfront told my husband when we started dating I will want to get married and have kids at some point if this works out. I'm being honest. If you don't want that, let me know now. He said I'm ready to see where this goes and if we haven't killed each other in 3 years, let's do it. All the way through dating and our first 3 years he kept saying let me know if I ever do anything that annoyed you. Don't keep it to yourself. Okay? So I kept waiting to find something. It never came. We never argued. Never got bored and always looked forward to what the future held for us. Our 3rd year came around and we had already had little chat about if we wanted to get married. We had just moved into a new place so I proposed. With an omelette. About 3 months later I was pregnant, we were trying, and 6 months later we married. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary with our 10-month-old daughter. Everything is amazing. We've never felt so complete. Still not argued. Still excited about our future and still haven't found anything that annoys me about him. My wife and I had a pact like that for if we were 26 and single. This pact was from middle school and we kinda went separate ways after high school and reconnected when we were almost 25. We both had feelings for each other and started to date and remembered our pact. But that's not what made us get married. We're extremely happy with each other and even work together every day. We can joke with each other and tell each other whatever is bothering us at that moment and work to figure out a solution. We are a pretty damn good team in life and at our job too. Yeah. That's not a good idea. I agreed this with someone when I was 21 for when we were both 30. Actually we ended up dating IRL for like a year at 25 and it was a complete and utter f-king disaster after the first 3 months. Turns out the reason she was still single was that she was that. While to everyone else she met, she was extremely sweet and caring. After 3 months into any relationship, she turned into a complete and utter neurotic psychopath, as in probably diagnosably so, and relentlessly bullied everyone she had ever dated until either they dumped her or she dumped them if she thought that would cause more emotional pain. It clicked when I got speaking to one of her exes who had had basically exactly the same experience. Was happily married since 29. So wouldn't have come up anyway. But f-king hell. Dodge a bullet there. A friend and I had an agreement we'd marry if we were both single when he was 53 and I 49. Last year I was the witness to his marriage and signed their license. I was 47. 2 months later he gets super nasty with me and accused me of doing drugs. I was using CBD oil for pain. He's been nothing but nasty with me since and I've cut ties with him. I now see how he was manipulative and mentally abusive about my mental and physical issues. I feel I dodged a bullet. Thankful and grateful it was her and not me. I've no other single male friends to make such a pact with. Wish there was after reading some of these answers. I have one such arrangement pending. We, both men, were roommates and just got along very well. I made him laugh. And he cooked healthy food for me. I can't remember if the agreement was 35 or 30. But I should check on that because, as a matter of fact, if the latter then we technically ought to have been married by now. Edit to add. I identify as straight. I am not sure if he identifies as straight or not. But do know that he has dated women. He was dating a woman at the time we made the arrangement. Ike. Not the same but similar story. My favorite animal is an otter. And I'm slightly obsessed with them. I have otter blankets, pillowcases, mousepad, shirts, tattoo, etc. My best friend when I was younger lived about an hour away. We met at church camp when we were 7. But we kept in contact once we both got phones in 6th grade. Once 8th grade or so hit I asked my best friend at the time if we ever got married in the future. Would you let me have a pet otter? She laughed about it and said sure. If we get married you can have a pet otter. Fast forward to today. We are engaged and I still plan on keeping her to her word. TLDR asked my best friend in 8th grade if she would allow me to have a pet otter if we got married. And she agreed. We are now engaged and I plan on having one still. Note, I would own one in the acts of conservation of the species for those that cannot be rehabilitated. I met my fiancé study abroad and we became very good friend. I would say best friend. We had a low-key relationship while we were there. We were young. We just make out and hold hands when our friends aren't around. We did it because both of us know that when the program ends, we will go back to our home country and it wouldn't work if we date. I was jokingly say when we are 30 and single. Let's get married. We stay friend over the years. Fast forward to 2018. I got out of a relationship and she was healing from her last relationship. We get reconnect and talk more over a few weeks. I bought up the pack we made 7 years back. Now, we are engaged and soon to be married. If I could wish for a perfect woman, it would be her. Edit. I made a mistake in the year. My fiance read this and she laughed BC I made a mistake. She still loved me. My wife and I had this deal when we were 27. But then I just asked her out and we were in a long distance relationship for about 3 months then we ended up breaking up. After about 4 years. We tried again and were in communication until we fell in love again and still in a LDR. This time we were able to work it out. We got married this past January as the world is ending. I guess we made it just in time for our 35th birthdays. I have a pact like this. Although I think we said 50. He's my best friend. And I am not sure how serious he is about that. But he is an amazing guy. And said this to comfort me because I had a really hard breakup. And I felt like I'd be alone forever. I don't think it'll ever happen. And I would not want it to happen. ATM. Can't tell what 50 might bring. But I really appreciate him saying that, because it made me feel like at least someone would like me eventually. Man, I hadn't realized this was such a common thing. I'm one of the ones who had I guess you'd call it a half-hearted, mostly kidding kind of an agreement. Mine was made in high school and targeted age 30. I think it was. But we slowly drifted out of contact during college since we ended up in different areas of the country and eventually her parents moved. I don't even know if she remembered it by then. But it's one of those things where I sometimes wonder what might have come of it. Because we clicked pretty well whenever we hung out. Not me but my mom. My parents got divorced 2 years ago because both my parents were very unhappy with one another. My mom recently reconnected with her old boyfriend from high school who, in his own words, would never marry anyone else and would wait for her to be with him. And would have no one else. Well, he heard about my mom's divorce, keep in mind my mom is 50, on Facebook and reached out to her and they have recently started dating again and are already madly in love. I'm really happy for her. My dad also found someone but that's irrelevant to the question stated lol. At 14 years old me and my high school boyfriend agreed to marry each other when we were 25. By 25 we had stayed together through school, college, university and starting careers. We got officially engaged, bought a house and planned the wedding. Then he left me for a woman from work. He's married to her now. I'm not married. You might not be where you hope to be today, but you are better off that he left you then than being bound to him today. My boyfriend and I at one point decided if we never got girlfriends we'd move in together and maybe get married. Thought I was gay at the time. We were best friends. We spent tons of time together and many people assumed we were dating. He liked me, and I loved him more than anyone in the world. Except in a friend kinda way. We started talking about this potential future quite often. At one point he mentioned that it definitely wouldn't happen if I got a girlfriend and that's when I decided I didn't need a girlfriend. Eventually we started fake dating because people kept asking if we were and it seemed like it'd be easier to explain when we finally did move in together. Within about a week I knew I was in love and probably had been for quite a while. I love him so much and he's still my best friend and I'm super excited for when he gets out of college and we can finally move in together and hopefully eventually get married. My best friend Michael and I made this exact promise to each other. On a hot night in Tucson during an early fling we had. We said we'd marry at 28 if we were both still single. We've been fixtures in each other's lives ever since. Best friends really. But have been seeing, or not seeing, other people ever since we dated during college. I just realized he's turning 28 in 2 weeks. And I just got a voicemail from him that he needs to talk. I wonder if Sir. You don't think Sir. Edit. He just told me he met someone. And is engaged to her. I think this whole time. We were really meant to be. And we were deluding ourselves thinking ourselves. How bad would it be to try to break them up? Probably won't be easy though. Sigh. Here she looks like Cameron Diaz circa 20 years ago. My husband and I made a joke in high school that we would get married at 30 if we were single. We were friends through school but not super close or even part of the same circle. We both had boyfriend-girlfriend at the time as well. After we graduated school I broke up with my boyfriend of 5 years, same one I had when we made the joke, and made a soppy Facebook status about hating men. My husband messaged me saying that I can't hate them all and there has to be a few exceptions. We've been together almost 6 years. Married for almost 2 and have a baby on the way. We aren't 30 yet but it was the best decision of my life. Looking back at it, I think we both must have had a thing for each other. Otherwise we never would have made the joke. I had a great friend in college. We've since drifted apart and moved to different states. I always said back then, even to him, that if we weren't married by the time we were 40, I'd marry him. He was always wonderful and I loved him as a friend. I just wasn't really physically attracted to him. And I couldn't figure out why. There was nothing wrong with him. I just didn't feel that way about him. And he never asked me out either. Everyone would say we should date. But I just couldn't think of him that way. I would spend a lot of time with him and we talk for hours. I just genuinely enjoyed his company. So that's why I made the pact. Well, I am married now anyway. But I was recently talking with a friend about him, so we looked him up just to see how he was doing. He is out of the closet and living happily. I wonder sometimes if I knew subconsciously or something. But it still shocked me and my friend. We've had other friends who've revealed they are gay. And we kinda knew and weren't surprised. But we never expected him. Edit. I know this doesn't exactly answer the question. So sorry. Not so much of a marriage deal but more a mutual understanding that we wanted to be together. I'd known her for years and we'd tried dating a few times to various degrees, but ultimately she wasn't sure about kids and I always knew that I wanted a family. We were lucky that we stayed close friends after we dated and she was by my side through a lot. I found a beautiful girl I saw myself with for the rest of my life, but it wasn't meant to be and she left me at the altar. Afterwards I met the love of my life and we had 2 beautiful kids together, but cancer took her away from me far too soon. After some years of healing and grieving I eventually went back to the first girl and we've been together ever since. I had this pact with my best friend. We made it in high school that if we weren't married by 30 we would get married. Well, 30 got really close and we got nervous and both agreed to bump it to 40. What's the rush? A couple of years after the revised agreement he got married and I was his best woman. I told the story of our pact as part of my toast. We still laugh about it. I had a friend who I made a pact with like this. He was 6 years older than me. I was so in love with him. But I know he only saw me as a best friend or little sister type. But he knew how much I loved him. Not in like a sexual way. I just really cared deeply for him as a person. We were talking and decided that by the time I was 30 and we were both single, we'd get married. Well, 2012. November. He died in a car wreck. I turned 30 this past year. And I'm still single, though I do have a 7-year-old son I raised by myself who he did know and love before he passed, and it really hit me hard. He was in a relationship in 2012 when he died. But who knows what would have happened in these past 7 years. I could have married my best friend. At least I know he visits me from time to time and I think of him often.